What's going on, guys? My name is Dan Lam. I'm a fitness coach for busy Asian men looking to lose belly fat and get lean without giving up their cultural foods. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I helped my client Vu lose over 40 pounds in 12 months without giving up his cultural Asian foods. This is a real client case study. Vu's been working with me for over a year now. And so we're going to break down the exact 4-pillar system we use to get him these results so that you can do the exact same thing. And the good thing is that, as a 30-year-old Asian American tech professional, he was able to lose 40 pounds in under a year, still eating, the traditional Vietnamese foods he grew up with, the pho, the rice, the noodles, every single week. Myself, I've been in fitness for over 11 years. I lost 30 pounds, had my own transformation, as you can see here. And over the past 2.5 years, I've helped over 250 plus Asian men transform their health, get in the best shape of their lives. And so like I said before, I'm going to be breaking down the exact system that we use to get Vu these results, so that you can do the exact same thing. All right. Now, where did Vu start, right? So that you guys can see the journey from start to finish. And I'm sure a lot of you will relate with, where he was at the beginning, which is that he wasn't someone who was lazy. He was trying a lot of things. He was working hard. He was putting in the effort, right? As someone who was working 10 plus hour days in tech, sometimes getting to the gym was difficult, right? But he was still trying to lift weights a couple times a week. He was doing the 5 times, 6 times a week cardio. He was just doing everything he could, looking up YouTube videos, trying to piece together some things that he could do to get more active, right? Which is a good start. But the difficult part was that he tried giving up the foods he loved, the foods he grew up with, the foods he was used to eating, right? Coming from a Vietnamese background, which was him, and I resonate with that a lot as well because I grew up eating a lot of Vietnamese food, was that he was trying to cut out carbs. He was trying to eat the salads, the chicken breast and broccoli, the bland foods, because that's what 99% of mainstream fitness advice tells you to do, right? But as someone who loves his pho, his bún bò Huế, his banh mi, he thought he had to give all of that up to get in shape. And the only thing that ended up happening was that he just felt miserable. He felt like he was starving himself, and he would, get to the end of every day still hungry and still craving food, right? Which is a very difficult thing to stay consistent with over a long time horizon. And the most frustrating thing, which I think a lot of you guys will resonate with, is that he felt like nothing was working. Even though he was doing all these things, he was working out, he was eating healthy, eating clean, he still kept seeing the scale go up. He still kept noticing that his clothes were getting tighter. And so he told me when he started is that he just wanted to, fit in his clothes again and be healthy, right? But the thing is, nothing he tried was working, and he felt stuck. And that's when he reached out to me. And for him, the biggest wake-up call was that he got his blood test results back, right? Since COVID, his weight had just kept climbing. He felt like he had let himself go. But the scary part was that his A1C was creeping up to borderline diabetic range, right? And for those of you guys who don't know, A1C is just your average blood sugar. And so a high average blood sugar is the road to diabetes, and like I said before, his A1C was heading towards pre-diabetic. And, for someone who saw family health issues occur with his relatives and even his own parents, like that changed everything for him. And that was his wake-up call to be like, okay, I got to do something about this now, not later. And so the thing with Vu, the real problem wasn't discipline. It was a direction problem because he had the effort, right? He was doing all of these things, but he was missing the right system built for his lifestyle, built for his culture, and built for his schedule. And the way, as a coach, I define a system is just a clear set of steps that will work no matter how busy you get, because you are an individual person. You can't just take some cookie cutter generic approach that someone tells you online, some Western fitness coach tells you online, and go apply it immediately to your life, because there's other factors in the way. It's like, what kind of foods do you eat? What does your schedule look like? What do your demands look like right now? And we have to build a system that works around that, so you can repeat successful actions and stay consistent to get to your fitness goal, right? And so what most coaches told him to do was to cut out the carbs, cut out the rice, work harder, be more disciplined, right? And he had been trying that for years, but nothing really worked, because he would be consistent for a couple of weeks, and then work would get busy, and then he'd fall off. Or he would get motivated for a couple of weeks because he really wanted to make a change, but he just found out, a couple of weeks later that it was really, really hard to stick to, and he couldn't keep it up. And that's when he lost motivation, right? And so the new way that we did things, is we built the whole plan around his Vietnamese food, his cultural foods, and schedule, not against it. And that one shift, like building everything with that frame in mind, is the one shift that finally made things work. And I'm going to go through with you the 4 key things that we did and walk you through exactly how to do it, like the ins and outs of tactics, everything. So I'm super excited. Cool. Now, before we start, if you want some help doing this with your own, personalized plan and one-on-one help, easiest thing to do to reach me is just DM me the word Asian on Instagram, and I'd love to chat with you about your fitness goals to see if I can help. But let's get into it. Okay, 4 key pillars that change everything. So these create not just short-term results, but long-term results. This is something I have to drill with my clients so often because I think so many of us have been sold the pipe dream of like short-term results, lose weight fast, challenges, short-term things, boot camps, right? And the allure of short-term results sounds really good because it's like, oh, I want results fast, so I'm going to get results fast. But oftentimes the thing that gets you to lose weight the fastest is not the thing that's going to help you keep it off for the longest time. Okay. And so for each of these 4 key pillars, we're going to talk about the old way, like the wrong way that kept Vu stuck, and the new way that worked and how you can make that shift for yourself. So 4 key pillars. Number 1 is nutrition, right? Eating the right foods in the right amounts. Number 2, exercise, building muscle the smart way. Number 3, progress tracking, which means measuring what actually matters. And number 4, this is slept on, no pun intended, a ton, is recovery. Sleep and rest that fuels results. All right. And we're gonna deep dive into all of these things, right? So first things first, pillar number 1 is nutrition. Right now, we're gonna talk about the basics first before we get into tying that into cultural foods, Asian foods, because we have to understand all the pieces of the puzzle, right? So first things first, what are macros? You probably heard them before. You've heard people talk about them. Macros are just short for macronutrients. And I want you to think of them as the 3 building blocks of food. 3 building blocks of food: protein, carbs, and fat. In simple terms, protein builds and keeps your muscle. This is the most important one. Carbohydrates, think of them as your energy for workouts in daily life, right? So that includes rice, noodles, fruits, veggies, grains, all kinds of stuff, right? Fats are super important as well. Fats make hormones like testosterone and help your body absorb the right nutrients. So in essence, what I'm saying to you is that you need all 3. And I think in fitness, it's very common to see people demonize certain things. They'll demonize carbs, demonize fat. They'll kind of demonize one or the other. But like, you need a balanced proportion of all 3. And so before we get into this, I want to encourage you to shift your mindset around food from restriction to moderation. Restriction to moderation. Because if you approach fitness and nutrition specifically with a mindset of, I'm going to restrict myself and cut things out, you will never achieve the long-term results. Because if you look at the way your life realistically is right now, you probably go out to dinners, you probably have some days where your diet isn't perfect, you probably travel sometimes for work, or you have to get takeout. That is totally okay. And so the only methodology that's going to work long term there is moderation, right? Cutting things out only works for so long. Okay. And so, like I said before, it's not about dieting, but it's about sustainability, sustainable nutrition. And so what Vu was doing before was he wasn't aware of macros at all. Really, he just had no idea. He would just blindly cut out rice, eat the salad and chicken, guess at the portions, didn't really have any real numbers. And he would basically just try to eat less and hope that he would lose weight on the scale, right? But what we did instead, and I'm going to break all this down in a second, is we showed him what his actual targets and numbers were. And then we built his favorite foods around them, right? So in that scenario, it becomes less about dieting and it just becomes strategic eating. Okay. And that's the unlock. Oops, sorry about that. And that was the unlock for him. So step 1 with nutrition is to find your maintenance calories. Now, what maintenance means is the amount of food, think calories, food, energy, same thing, right? The amount of food you need to eat to stay the exact same weight. So that means you're not gaining weight, you're not losing weight, you're staying the same, right? Now, how we found Vu's number is we use his age, height, weight, and activity level to find this, right? Those are the factors that you need to consider when you're doing this. And you can use any sort of online calorie calculator to do this. It's very simple and it's free. But his we found after his current stats as a 30-year-old male, 5'6", 180 pounds, lightly active, his maintenance calories was around 2,400 a day. As you can see here, this is his calculation, right? So he's lightly active, which means his maintenance is like 2,364, which is right around 2,400. So you can see the more sedentary you are, the less active you are, the lower calories, the lower your maintenance calories are. And then the more active you are, then the higher maintenance calories are, which means the more you can eat, right? Now, the reason this matters so much, as simple as it may look, is that if you have never found this number, if you have never actually calculated this for yourself, this is probably why your effort isn't working. This is probably why you're doing cardio, you're eating clean, you're cutting out rice noodles, but it's still not working because you're guessing instead of measuring. Okay, so before you go on to the next part of this video, pause, do this first. Like, you can follow along, calculate this first, and then go on to the next sections of this video. So then you'll actually have a clear number. Okay, now step 2 is we don't start cutting calories right away. All right, that sounds crazy because I thought, losing fat and losing weight was about cutting calories. No, we want to raise your metabolism first. All right, and the way we raise your metabolism is we increase your step count, increase his step count up to 10,000 a day gradually. All right, it didn't happen all at once, but this was one of the first few steps we did. And the way you can increase your step count, which is the best measure of your average activity level, is doing walks after meals, doing walks after the gym, doing quick walks after work. There's no crazy cardio routine involved in this. It's just like adding in little bits and pieces of walks throughout the day, right? And it's just finding little gaps in your day, in your workday, where you can make that happen. So it's not about overhauling your entire schedule, right? And so by doing that first, that got his maintenance calories to 2,700 a day. So it increases metabolism and his daily burn, which means that he could eat more food and still lose fat. So I wanted to give him that buffer first so he could eat as much as possible and still lose fat, right? Because what the mistake a lot of people do is they just focus on cutting calories. And so because they aren't active yet, and they try to cut calories first, and they have to eat so little to lose weight that it becomes unsustainable. It becomes too little for them, right? I genuinely think, like, as an adult male, your maintenance calorie, like, you should not be eating any less than 2,000 calories a day. Ideally, you want to get that up as high as you possibly can, right? And we'll talk about other ways to increase your metabolism later naturally, without any other BS stuff. But like, this is the first step, is you have to get more active, not for the sake of burning calories, for that sole purpose, but it's so you can eat more to lose fat, increasing that buffer, right? I cannot stress this enough. If you do this, then you will actually be able to live your life, have flexibility, and still see progress on the scale. Okay. And this kind of goes back to what I was showing you before here, where, once we got him up to 10K steps a day is like moderate, I would say moderately active. So now his maintenance is around 2,700 a day, as you can see here. Cool. Now, step 3, once you've increased your metabolism, so you've gotten your calories as high as you possibly can, then you have to create the calorie deficit. And a calorie deficit, in simple terms, is just a term for eating less than your body burns per day. So your body has a certain amount of energy it requires to function and to stay the same weight. If you eat less than that, there's a deficit, which means your body is going to use to find that extra energy from stored body fat or muscle tissue if you do it the wrong way. But it's either way, it's going to find energy from somewhere, right? So what we did for Vu is we took his maintenance calories and we dropped it by 500 a day. So his maintenance calories was 2,700. We dropped that by 500, and now it's 2,200 a day. So he lost fat consistently by doing that simple step, right? Now, the reason this is so important is that once you know your exact numbers, it's really hard to fail. It's really hard to fail because there's just no way you can go wrong, right? You have such a clear, precise target in mind. Okay. Now, step 4, and this is the number most guys miss, is the protein. Okay, protein. And this is especially hard with traditional Asian foods because they can be so carb heavy, especially if you go out to restaurants or you eat at your parents' houses or your friends' houses, right? Like the food is just very carb heavy. And so that is even more of a reason to prioritize protein as much as you possibly can. And the target you want to shoot for is about 1 gram of protein per pound you weigh. So if you're 200 pounds, that's 200 grams of protein, right? Technically, it's like anywhere from 0.8 grams per pound to 1 gram per pound is fine. So that means if you're 200 pounds, that's 160 to 200 grams of protein per day. But just for simple math, you can just take your body weight, multiply by 1, and that's how many grams you need per day. Okay. So like I said before, Asian food, you must focus on this. Otherwise, you're going to be mainly just eating carbs all day, right? Now, why does protein matter? Because protein keeps your muscle while you lose fat. This is 100% a non-negotiable that you have to nail down if you want to lose fat and not muscle. One of the things that happens if you don't prioritize protein is you end up losing a lot of muscle mass, and so you end up just becoming a smaller version of your current physique, but you don't end up leaning out, toning up, losing body fat, right? And then you end up in that sort of skinny fat look where you still have the belly, you still have the love handles, but you lose all definition in your arms and in your body because you lost a lot of muscle along the way, right? So, all right, now step 4 with nutrition is the number that most guys miss, all right? The target you want to shoot for here is to shoot for 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. Like I said, protein matters because that keeps your muscle while you lose fat. And the rice noodle problem, right? This matters a lot with rice and noodles because if you will also most likely be starving along the way, and just like Vu was, right? Because he was missing that protein anchor. Protein is one of the most filling. It actually is the most filling, satiating macronutrient out of all the three. So that's why it's also super important to prioritize. So it'll help you eat less naturally and maintain muscle, and so it has a double. All right. So we've got the calorie number now. Now we got to make sure that we have the protein number locked in as well. So these two things work in tandem. All right. So I get a lot of questions too from our clients about like how many carbs, fats, protein should I eat? I say the two most important numbers that you have to worry about is just your calories and your protein per day. If you nail those two down, your carb intake, your fat intake, it'll vary day to day, but that's okay. It doesn't really matter that much. Okay. Now, what we did not do is we didn't give him a meal plan or give him foods that were completely different from what he was used to eating. We just rebalanced his current meals. And I think that's a shift that any of you can make, is just think of rebalancing the meals you already eat. Right? Don't try to eat some bland chicken breast and broccoli that you've never eaten in your life, or that you would never do. Like just take your traditional meals and just restructure them according to these rules here, which is making sure that your meals are ideally under 600 calories with at least 40 to 50 grams of protein. That's like a general rule to follow, right? So for example, with pho, a lot of you guys are familiar with pho, right? One of my favorite dishes as well. Pho, if you just order it the way it is, or you make it the way most people make it, it's mostly noodles, right? So what we did instead is we added more bean sprouts, basil, brisket or ribeye for lean protein, and cut back on the noodle portions a little bit, right? So it's the same dish, more protein, fewer calories, right? So that's an example of what you can do if you're eating out at restaurants. But one of the most important things that you want to have for yourself is like a meal structure, right? Or a plan that you can follow, because it'll eliminate decision fatigue. It'll simplify things. It'll take the guesswork out of it, and it'll help you get consistent, right? So what I would recommend for simplicity's sake is, number one, don't skip meals. All right. Don't skip breakfast. I know a lot of you are right now. A lot of our clients come into the program skipping breakfast because they think that's what they should do, but it ends up backfiring on them later because they snack and they crave things. So don't skip breakfast, first of all right? And what I recommend is finding 2 go-to options for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So 2 options you like for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and you can rotate them so that you have variety, right? You have variety. but you also have that structure that's like not too complicated for meal prep. Okay, because you're probably going to be busy during the week. You don't have time to spend hours and hours in the kitchen cooking, right? So just find 2 options that you like for each, and then that becomes your rotation. Okay. Now, like I said before, once we had Vu stop skipping breakfast, that completely cut out his late night cravings. Because think about it this way, right? Just from a first principles perspective, if you restrict yourself, there's going to be a bounce back effect from that, right? If you don't give your body the food it's looking for, or the food it needs, or the fuel it needs, it's going to get it somehow, right? And the way that manifests is with cravings. It's with snacking, right? It's with overeating. Because if you skip that entire meal, you're gonna need energy somehow, somewhere, sometime. And so that's your body's natural reaction to that. So just by having breakfast every day cuts down cravings a lot, right? Now the thing we also didn't want him to do was to give up the restaurants or the family dinners, right? So I get this question a lot too. Well, how do I prepare? How do I stay on track when I'm eating out at Asian restaurants? Because there's so many ingredients, so much food, right? And so what we helped him do was walk in with 1 to 3 orders from every restaurant he goes to that fit his target, right? So I'm not Vietnamese, so I'm gonna butcher this pronunciation, but pho thai bo vien, right? Which is like the pho with the beef balls and the lean meat, right? The com tam, which is the pork and rice, the pork and broken rice. And so every Asian restaurant you go to, you want to find 1 to 3 orders that fit that 600 calorie and 40 to 50 gram of protein metric, right? So how do you guess the numbers? You can, the easiest way you can do it is you can take a picture of it, drop it into Claude or ChatGPT, ask it to give you a conservative estimate of the calories and protein, and then you add 150 calories on top of it just to be safe. And is it going to be perfect? No, but it's going to be pretty darn close. And this can work for any food or dish you want. Okay. So I also wanted to show you guys what a real day of eating looks like for him. His calories are lower here than 2,400 because he's 40 pounds lighter now, right? So that's another thing to consider is as you lose weight, you want to double check your daily calories to make sure that it's matching your current weight. You don't need to do this all the time, but I'd say every like 5 to 10 pounds or so you lose, you do want to double check the intake. Okay. So as you can see here, like he has some simple things in the morning, right? It's nothing crazy, basic American food, a protein shake, a little bit of bread, pork, right? He just makes basic things for lunch. But in the dinner, you can see here that he has, the noodles, he has the protein portions in there. So it's exactly what we talked about, right? And he splits his meal. So for him, he likes having a bigger breakfast, a smaller lunch, and a bigger dinner. That's just what works for him. But you guys can figure that out however you want. But it's really just about finding a flow that works for you and then making sure that you hit your daily calorie and protein targets. All right, daily calorie and protein targets. So, for example, Vu is 140 pounds now. So he's eating about 0.8 grams per pound of body weight versus 140, right? That's why he's at the 125 gram of protein mark. So, this is just an example of like what a day of eating could look like. Okay, so very simple. Now, pillar number 2 is exercise. All right. So one thing I want to drill into your brains that you guys have to understand is that exercise is not about burning calories. If your goal is fat loss, to look lean like this guy, this AI generated guy right here, all right? It's not about burning calories. You will not achieve this type of physique just focusing on cardio. You have to build muscle. And so when Vu started with us, what he was doing was cardio 5 times a week. He was barely lifting weights. When he went to the gym, he didn't have a plan, so he didn't know if he was making progress or not. And that was getting him the wrong result. Cardio burns calories while you do it, but too much of it eats away at your muscle tissue, right? Because you need a certain level of stimulus of strength training per week to maintain the muscle you have on your body right now. Okay. So the right way to do it is to lift weights, to focus on lifting weights and build muscle. Focus, like having a program that is primarily focused on that instead of cardio. Because muscle is what makes you look lean. It burns more calories. It makes it easier to stay in shape. And so it's not about breaking a sweat, but it's about breaking down muscle tissue and building it back stronger. Okay. And so the goal with someone like Vu, who works a 10-hour day, is that he couldn't live in the gym, right? And I'm sure most of you are busy with your work schedules. Maybe you have meetings that go late sometimes, you have families, you just have a social life after work. You can't live in the gym. It doesn't make sense to do it 2 hours a day, and it's also not necessary, right? What we want to focus on is constraining the sessions to 45 to 60 minutes max and working each muscle group twice a week. And the easiest way to do that for any of you is to do an upper body day, a lower body day, and a full body day. That's 3 days a week, right? Now, the benefit of this split is that you can, it's very flexible, first of all, because it's only 3 days out of the week. And you can move days around depending on what comes up in your schedule. So you have 7 days a week. You can move this stuff around whenever you need to, right? But the other benefit that I see is that you can do an upper body day and a lower body day back to back on, let's say, a Saturday and a Sunday when you're off from work, right? So you don't need to be going to the gym 5 days a week, and you don't need to be feeling bad about yourself if you miss a day, because you only need 3. And so what schedule that worked really well for Vu is he would do like upper body day Friday, lower body day Saturday, and then he would rest a couple days and he would do his full body day on Tuesday. Right? So if I was like super busy though, like let's say my work week was super packed, I would do an upper body day on Saturday, a lower body day on Sunday, and then do one full body day on Wednesday, midweek, right? Just give yourself some rest in between that upper and lower day, but you can stack these. So it's a very flexible split, and it also allows you to work each muscle group twice a week, which fits the criteria. Okay. Now, like I said before, the sessions, 45 to 60 minutes max. If you are spending more than an hour in the gym right now, you're most likely doing it wrong, and you're most likely not getting the most out of your training. Because after that 60-minute mark, you're fatigued, right? You're not going to be able to give 100% effort, and so you're getting way less than you could be out of your training. And so a guided structure, a guided plan showed him every exercise, exactly how to do each exercise, and what sets, what reps, what everything. So there's no more guesswork, and he could accomplish all of this in just 3 sessions a week, right? And as you can see in his physique, when I first showed you, it firmed up. He went from looking soft to like rock solid and toned, right? So that's the exercise portion of it, and you notice how it's pretty short because it's important, but it's not as important as nutrition, which is why nutrition was the biggest pillar, right? Now, pillar number 3 is all about tracking, okay? And when I say tracking, I mean you have to track the right metrics. Most guys just obsess about the scale because that's all they know how to measure, right? And so when the scale goes up 2 pounds from them eating, a big bowl of pho, the next day they get discouraged. They feel like they gain weight. Or if they go out for Korean barbecue and then they gain weight the next day, they get discouraged. And then they don't, because they don't see any other metrics, any other metrics go in the right direction. But what you want to do instead is understand that the scale is one number, and it bounces around for hundreds of reasons that have nothing to do with fat loss or fat gain, right? But you need to track it in addition to other metrics, which is your lifts in the gym, like your strength in the gym, and your progress photos. That's super important. So your body weight, what you want to do is take a daily average, not a single number. Your lifts, meaning are you getting stronger over time, which means you're building muscle, and your weekly progress photos is like seeing your visual progress, right? So these 3 things are the most important things to track. Now, how do you know it's actually working? That's a question I get a lot too. Well, how do I know if this is actually working? A couple scenarios. If your weight is going down, but your lifts are going down, that means you're losing muscle along with fat. No bueno, not good. If your weight stays flat initially and your lifts go up, but you also notice that you're more defined in your progress photos, and that means you are recomping, which means that you are changing the composition of your body to build more muscle, right? Meaning like you're probably losing fat, but you're building muscle at the same rate. So then your weight is evening out, right? The best scenario is that your weight's going down, but your lifts are going up, and you're also looking sharper and leaner and more toned in photos, which means you are losing fat the right way. That's how you know that it's working. All right. And here's the thing, you can see from here, if the scale is the only thing you track, you're flying blind and you might quit when it's actually working. That's the kicker. Okay, so make sure you track all of these three things. I would recommend weighing in daily at the same time every day, taking progress photos once a week, and then your lifts you should be tracking every time you work out, so 3 times a week. Now, here's the piece that almost nobody talks about, which is recovery and sleep. It's a boring subject. No one likes talking about it, but I can tell you with absolute certainty after coaching 250 plus Asian guys, every single person I've coached, 99% of them who come into this program, I ask them about their sleep, and it's nowhere near optimized. They're like getting 4 to 5, maybe 6 hours of sleep a night. It's inconsistent. They have no plan around it, and it's terrible, right? And so the bad habits that I see a lot is, number one, obviously working late and kind of letting work bleed into your recovery time, scrolling in bed late at night, no set bedtime, or even eating meals right up to the time when you're trying to go to sleep. And that was where Vu was at too, a year ago when he joined us. And the reason this absolutely kills your results is because poor sleep can cut your fat burning abilities by up to half. Even if you're doing everything else right, even if you're tracking your food, you're eating the right food, your training is perfect, your steps are dialed in, like poor sleep alone can completely sabotage your progress, right? And it also spikes cravings and it throws off your hunger hormones, which means you crave more junk food, and your inhibitions are lower, so you're more likely to give into those cravings in the first place, right? So it's like, the way I think about sleep is it's like you're trying to, if you're doing everything right but your sleep isn't dialed in, it's like trying to row a boat upstream against the current. That's the way I would describe it, right? It just makes everything 10 times harder. So 2 simple fixes that helped Vu dial in his recovery too. Number 1 is what I call the bookend method, which means that you set a consistent sleep time and a consistent wake time every single day, which also means on weekends, so that your body learns the pattern and sleep becomes easier and deeper. If your sleep time constantly changes and fluctuates every single day, like your body is going to have such a hard time establishing a cadence in a good sleep schedule, right? So for example, for me, I go to bed at 10, I wake up at 6. Like that's my daily schedule, 10 to 6. If not, 10:15 to 6:15, or 10:30 to 6:30, right? Or 9:45 to 5:45. Anything within that window, that's my sleep schedule, right? Another thing is cold, blind, deaf, and hungry. You want to go to sleep cold, blind, deaf, and hungry, right? Which means that cold is you keep your room ideally 68 degrees or below, Fahrenheit, by the way, not Celsius, right? Blind, meaning you get blackout curtains, or you have an eye mask that blocks all light. Earplugs for deaf. And hungry means you have your last meal at least a couple hours before you go to sleep. All right. Once Vu locked in his sleep, fat loss got way, way easier, and his energy at work and the gym skyrocketed, because he was no longer trying to row a boat upstream against the current, right? He had all the pieces dialed in. Okay. And so this is the exact system I run my clients through. The cultural macros, the training, the sleep, and this is the entire system. This is what I've seen over the past 2.5 years are the most highest leverage things you can do to lose belly fat and get lean as an Asian guy without giving up your culture of foods. All right. And what I want to show you next is what this got him, right? So 1 year later, he's now down 40 pounds. He went from 180 to 140 pounds while building muscle at the same time. Right, this is his weight chart here, so you can see it's like a straight line down to the right. His A1C came down, so he was borderline, and now his A1C is at normal range again. And the coolest part, I think, of all this is that he actually referred his friend, and his friend is also down 20 pounds. His friend also happens to be a tech professional, and he's down 20 pounds as well. Pretty cool, right? And one of the things he told me too, aside from just the numbers, is that he feels like he's the most confident he's ever been. And he's actually, he said like, man, I never thought I could achieve this. Right. And I think sometimes when you're at the starting point, or when you've tried a lot of things that haven't worked, you kind of lose you lose trust in the process because you don't know how it's possible. But once you have the right system in place, everything gets easier. It's game over from there, right? So super happy for this guy. And so you can do the same thing, right? I hope this gave you confidence and conviction that you can do the exact same thing. Eating the foods you grew up with, not doing any strict diets, actually seeing sustainable results this time, right? And so if you're a busy Asian professional guy, you work long hours, you've tried the cutting out rice, you've tried intermittent fasting, you've tried keto, you've tried F45, you've tried all the things, and all they did was make you miserable, and you still can't seem to lose belly fat, you still can't seem to get back in shape with your schedule and with everything else you have going on. What I want you to do is just DM me the word Asian on Instagram at Dan W. Lamb. Happy to chat with you about your goals, current struggles, and if it makes sense, I'd be happy to show you, how the system works for your life and your food, and see if it might be a fit. All right, this is what I've gone over with you in this video is exactly how Vu went from creeping up towards pre-diabetic to being in the best shape of his life, and you can do the same. Hope you guys got value from this video. Appreciate you sticking around, and I'll see you in the next one.